Hi, I'm John Billingsley, and you are listening to Beyond Track podcast.
What are some thoughts of yours towards the whole, is Star Trek getting too woke?
The idea that a show that exists to push the boundaries in terms of what is acceptable and what it should be like just part of our human condition, which is, everybody on the fucking ship, as long as you're nice. To me, it's like you can't be too woke.
A red alert.
Fabulous. Big J, regular Renzo, and
you can call me Dag.
All right, fair enough.
John.
Big Dag, regular Dag, little Dag. I'm going to call you Little Dag. How about that?
I will take it.
You like Donald Trump.
Did we record that? Did we get that?
Yes.
Yes. That. Thank you.
We got
Dag, that. Big J.
Medium-sized
Renzo.
Should we call you Medium John or Little John, like Robin Hood, right?
Yeah, why don't you call me Tumescent John? How about that?
Okay.
Or thick as a brick John. Or I'm going to close the door because my wife's going to start listening to this and commenting.
Oh, okay.
I know, you heard me.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Well, now that we hit the high note.
I'm going to close the door.
Oh, there's part of that library you were talking about.
Yeah, he's got a ton of books.
That is a lot of books.
This is the surface of the surface. I'm afraid this is there are books.
There's more.
I think.
Oh yeah, there are books. There are books in everywhere. You're seeing one like this thing right here. That is. There are 3 levels, and that's 1 level.
Oh wow.
That shelf. There are 4 levels.
Wow.
Okay.
4 they go 4 back 4 deep. So, and this is one room, and you're not seeing all the shelves in this room. I got about 25,000 books.
Oh my.
That's actually on our list of questions.
Yeah, well, what I really am is fucked up, is what I am.
What I'm concerned about, though, is in 2 years since the interview I read, you've gone from 15,000 to 25,000.
Whoa.
That's
a guesstimate. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it's 20,000. But yes, I have. When did we last chat?
So that was from 2018 where you said that.
Okay, well then, maybe I'm exaggerating then. If I said 15, then I don't know. I don't count, but I do buy a lot of books. 2020 kind of fucked me up because.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Where do you get all the books?
Most libraries in Los Angeles have library bookstores.
Okay.
And you get really great bargains there. And there's one, unfortunately, really good library bookstore that's on the walk I take when I'm memorizing lines.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a good day memorizing lines, I reward myself by buying books. And if I have a bad day memorizing lines, I make myself feel better by buying books. So
yeah.
It's been my problem. My whole fucking career, it's like, it's like reward, punishment, solace. It's all involves buying books.
Good. There's a question I wanted to ask later. I'm hoping I remember. I'm actually going to write it down. It was about what you just said with lines. So
I've
got to have that.
And so I'm trying to learn a mouthful of them right now, and I'm sadly realizing that I'm
Oh, so you got the script I sent you for this interview, so I don't like an idiot, right?
No, this is a really good part on a movie that I'm never going to fucking get because they're going to look for a name, and I still have to audition for it, which is incredibly irritating.
Well,
I'm going to give you all the interview shit before the interview actually starts. So I just wanted you to feel comfortable that I'm here. And now I'm going to make myself an alcoholic beverage. So I will be back.
Excellent. Okay.
Is it
Talk amongst yourselves.
awesome?
That was awesome.
Let's leave now.
All right. I am back. And this is a podcast, right? So we can start anytime you guys want, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
This is audio and video. So we're on YouTube and all the places people get podcasts.
Oh, so is it going live? Are people going to actually watch this live? No.
We're not streaming right now. We're going to publish this sometime next week.
Okay, cool.
There's an online Star Trek convention coming up. And so we'll premiere it for that. So that way we can talk to the viewers. So it won't be like live. It'll be semi-live.
Semi-live.
Right.
Secondhand live.
We'll be watching together, but it won't truly be live. But we are doing a couple actually real live stream reviews during this online thing. So Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So what do you got there?
Do I look pretty enough for you?
You do.
I think you look great.
Hiding myself or anything?
I feel like I overdressed.
Unless you got the denobium prosthetics to attach, I mean, that'd be the only possible way.
How pronounce that? What'd you say? Denobulin?
Denobulin?
Denobulin.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounded a little rough the first time.
Not going to cut it, my friend.
No.
No.
Denobulin. But you also have the Zalayan from my background, which was fantastic too. That seemed like a fun gig as well.
Yeah, see, yeah, I got
On the
it.
Oracle.
So, I mean, I'm sorry, but
Well,
No second appearance, but
let's do some meta announcements here for the listeners and the viewers. Obviously, you may or may not be able to tell, but we got John Billingsley from Star Trek Enterprise on the call. Not exclusively from Star Trek Enterprise. John has a lengthy career portfolio dating back to what IMDb says is 1988, but that was a while ago, maybe.
it was sentient before 1988, so I think I have a portfolio that my own
I don't think I can say the same.
portfolio.
I was
My
sentient
opinion.
before 1988, and so was Jay. So it's like 3 out of 4 of us.
My portfolio goes back to 1960, baby.
Oh,
Okay.
May 20. When I was slapped on the ass, my portfolio began.
520. That's like a month late.
Missed it by a month. It was close. So
All
close.
Good. It's all good. Thanks everybody for being here today. We have no idea. We're boldly going bonkers in this interview today. John, thank you so much for joining us. When I randomly retweeted you on Friday, did not expect I would be here. So I'm blown out of the
I'm
water.
quite the slut. I'm the most sluttish person on Star Trek. I indiscriminately respond to invitations hither and yon. This is
We're
my
glad
wife
you do.
behind me.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Is this going to come up? Will this come up on the podcast? It won't. will it?
Yes.
The YouTube.
Well, yeah. She was a Borg. She was the littlest Borg in season 2 of Enterprise, the show that killed the franchise.
Regeneration.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the episode that killed the franchise.
I'm sorry. That was my favorite episode.
Oh,
What
well,
are you
good.
talking about?
Well, there you go. All right, then just to tell you. Yeah, she was Borgified. And
That's great.
I visited her on the set that day because she was going to get killed and I wanted to watch. So
I'm going to make that note again for later about the that episode being the show that killed it. So when we get around
actually,
to
the episode that killed the show that killed the franchise was, I think, the one with Padma Lakshmi, where she was walking around in mud with Connor and they had a love affair. And it's like,
oh god, yeah.
Oh, well,
Hell of
we
a
will.
cook.
We
hell
will
of a cook,
definitely.
Padma Lakshmi.
Uh-huh.
Not saying anything against her cooking skills. And if I could have married Salman Rushdie, I probably would have done it too. So.
Well, we will definitely be revisiting your time with Star Trek. But first, I wanted to talk to you about the Hollywood Food Coalition.
You're going to make me start on a serious note. All right, fair enough.
Well, if we do the Star Trek last, then maybe people will actually listen through the whole thing.
Maybe, I don't know. You sure you don't want to get irreverent me out of the way and kind of segue into mature, sophisticated me? Because
it's going to come and go. We'll have
All right.
serious topics and then fun ones
Yes,
interspersed.
I am the president of the board of directors of an organization called the Hollywood Food Coalition, which has been around for about 33 years. It exists to help address issues of food insecurity in and around LA County. And we started as an organization that works specifically with people who are experiencing homelessness, providing a hot, nourishing 5-course meal 7 nights a week. We still do that. We call that our community dinner. We also have a community wellness program, which is designed to help people who come to us every night with daily necessities, shoes, clothing, sleeping bags, knapsacks, toothpaste, toiletry kits, you name it, bus passes, laundry vouchers. We help them access medical vans provided by UCLA, and we connect them with other social service organizations. The biggest thing we've been doing, though, of late is we have dramatically expanded the nature of how we rescue and share food. So we have a second space, and we have a program there we call the Community Exchange Program, which my wife, that wonderful little Borg behind you, her name is Bonnie Friederisi, helps to run. And essentially, we rescue almost 20,000 pounds of food a week, and we share that food with our own kitchen and with anywhere between 40 and 60 other community nonprofits. We help, in essence, augment, supplement, and build the food programs that their organization doesn't quite have the capacity to run on their own. So our gag is we try and be a concierge service, in essence, providing exactly what these small not-for-profits need so that their food programs can really answer the needs of their clients. And additionally, we have a fourth program we call community building. And that is, in essence, a way to recognize that a lot of the work we do, it's rooted in our name, Hollywood Food Coalition. A lot of the work we do through volunteerism, through building coalitions between community groups, between political groups, and et cetera, is to increase everybody's understanding of how working together helps fight food insecurity. So thousands of volunteers come through our doors every year. We have people come in every day to help us cook and serve and rescue food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we think volunteerism is a lot of the answer to the problem. That's my elevator pitch. Bing, bang, bong.
That's fantastic. I've always been enamored of groups like yours that, sort of work on the mentality that, yeah, if we all work together, we can help a lot more people. I'm super fascinated by it. I've been reading up on it this whole last week. So I hope to be a continuing donor.
I mean, it's why it's a passion of mine, I don't know. I've always been involved as sort of I'm an actor. I've been an actor my whole life, but the other passion for me has always been working in the social service field, usually as a board member, volunteering as well. And hunger and issues surrounding hunger and poverty have always been very close to me. 1 in 4 kids in America these days, it's gotten worse, of course, because of COVID,
right,
wakes up food insecure. In the richest country in the world, in the history of the world, 1 in 4 kids basically wakes up, and it's not that they're not necessary, they may eat, but they don't know when they're going to eat, where they're going to eat, what they're going to eat. Are they going to eat enough? Will they go to bed hungry? Will the food be nourishing? Will they feel like they've had a good enough? To me, that's just that's a moral outrage, and 40-ish% of the food we produce in our country just gets scrapped, just goes to waste. So yeah, it's probably what I do, and acting now is kind of like second on the list because it's a lot of work. We're growing. We're trying to respond to a lot of needs. If people want to support us, hofoco.org is our website, hofoco.org. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at, what's my Twitter handle, guys?
J Billingsley 60.
Bingo. If you don't know how to find Hollywood Food Coalition, come to me and I'll get you hooked up to them. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. There's probably a bunch of other social media shit we do that I don't know about. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that stuff.
We'll make sure to get all your links in the description of the show too.
Fabulous.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to ask. So, John, you mentioned rescuing food. Now, for the layman, I can assume I know what that means, but could you explain that just a little more? What you mean by rescuing food?
Yeah, it can come from all sorts of different places. Before COVID, for instance, because I was an actor and I'd see all this amazing food on sets get tossed. Mm-hmm. My wife and I organized a team of volunteers to drive around. We had 40 or 50 of us, and we'd pick up food from TV shows and film sets, and we'd rescue all this amazing food. There's a set of intricacies surrounding how food rescue works, and it depends on the state. There's a federal law called the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act that essentially says food that is fit for human consumption can be rescued. Some states interpret that to mean different things. Some states specifically exclude food put out on a buffet table. Other states do not. And then it gets more complicated because individual counties and individual health departments weigh in. We take a Catholic approach. We say if the food hasn't been plated, we want it because it's too good to waste. However, a lot of organizations, for them, what rescuing means is food that has reached its expiration date at a grocery store, or is at the verge of being, reaching an expiration date. Food that might have been prepared by a caterer but wasn't ever actually put on a buffet table. Mm-hmm. A lot of businesses throw big parties, and enormous amounts of food never even make it out of the kitchen. There are a lot of programs, particularly right now, that are state and county programs that are designed to get restaurateurs to make prepackaged meals to be delivered to various constituencies. They make more food than the system knows what to do with. We take the excess. There are a lot of farm to table programs that, for instance, box up produce and try and deliver it all around the city. We take what doesn't get delivered. Orchards, farms, you name it. There are all sorts of interesting places to get food, and individuals can do canned food drives, packaged food drives. We take it all.
Now, tell me, why is it, in your opinion, either opinion or that you just know, if this food is going to be good, perfectly edible, why is it getting thrown away as opposed to you and people like you and your organization being able to just pick it up? Why do you have to go on a scavenger hunt to try to catch
first off,
this?
look in your refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
How much food do you throw out?
Oh, yeah.
That's where you start.
Right.
We overconsume. We overproduce and we overconsume. And by overconsume, I mean that we purchase more than we need.
Yes.
And there really aren't mechanisms for the individual consumer to get food that they think, I'm probably not going to get to this. I'll just chuck it, as opposed to I'll give it someplace else. So a lot of food goes to waste in that respect. But the other thing is that big businesses exist by creating more than they actually can distribute. They always want to have more. If you end up as somebody who makes something and somebody says, I'll take gajillion, and you say, I've only got half a gajillion, they may A, go elsewhere, and B, you're going to feel like, oh, fuck, if I'd only made a gajillion.
Yeah.
So some of it is overconsumption is baked into the pie. Overproduction is baked into the pie of the capitalist model.
I got you. Okay.
I can go on and on. You don't want to hear me talk about food all night, because I can, but it's like, it'll be tedious. There are many reasons why it's difficult to rescue food, ranging from problems with for one thing, it's labor intensive. Mm-hmm. To rescue food means you've got to have the capacity to pick it up, which means you've got to have people who are going to pick it up, which means you're either paying them or you're relying on volunteers.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of money around to pay for people to go and pick up stray food. And
they probably need big pickup trucks, vans, if they don't have it. Now, I don't want to tie up the entire topic with the questions, but John, I'm going to tell you this little funny tidbit that I tell my sister, and if she listens to this, she's going to kill me, but I like to tell her that her refrigerator is full, but no two things could make a meal.
Ouch.
Interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. When I grew up,
Kathy, if you hear this, I love you. Don't kill me.
You see, you're going to get me started on social issues, and I can go on and on because
that's the next topic.
When I grew up, I was lucky because I grew up in a fairly wealthy community, and the tax base allowed our school system to offer such things as home ec.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Not to mention shop and photography and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
We don't teach our kids to cook. We don't teach our kids goddamn thing about what food means, how to grow it, how to prepare it, how to save it, how to store it. We don't teach them shit.
You're right.
Yep.
So,
sustainable.
Yes. And sustainability is ultimately a function of how much respect we as a society place in our education system. Nothing we do is sustainable right now because we don't give a flying fuck about educating our children.
We might think the opposite in some circles. If we don't teach them, they'll overconsume, and that's what we want.
Yes, and you could argue that there's also a strain of thought that believes that as long as you don't teach kids, they'll grow up to be serfs. And then we can pay them shit, and they can be a nice little form of effectively slave labor for us. Don't get me started, baby.
So we've gone from Beyond Trek podcast to Communist Trek podcast at this point, and I'm totally
you know what? And the thing is, I'm totally not a communist because that doesn't work because you put power into the hands of the state, and the problem is the state's fucking corrupt.
Yeah.
So eventually there's a balance to be found, and I think a lot of the Scandinavian countries have done a better job than most at finding that balance between a state that actually assumes certain responsibilities to its citizens that requires them to intervene in a managed economy while recognizing that the heavy fucking club ain't the fucking answer either.
Mm-hmm. We don't need tankies running this show at all.
Which seems like it should be common sense, but I have a couple
more questions about Hao Foucault, but Renzo?
I've got one question just about how you got into the activism side of this. Now, you mentioned that you don't remember like how you started caring about this, right? But surely there's like some good anecdote you can tell us about how, like, listen, in high school, I
was a four-eyed fucking dweeb, you know? I mean, I was going to get pushed in the hallway.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think it starts from having a sense of where are you? Are you an underdog or are you an overdog? And if you're an underdog, you grow up giving a fuck about the underdog, you know, and I've always cared about the underdog. I believe that I'm an underdog and I like underdogs consequently, and I can sing the underdog theme song.
Man, I just shared an underdog GIF with a friend of mine.
Really? I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
I love underdog.
Underdog.
Yeah.
That takes me back. Yeah.
That's going to be on Trek podcast. This is going to be my ringtone.
Underdog. Does anybody remember the words?
I don't remember the words. I kind of remember the tune. That's
I
it.
remember seeing it when I was really little. That's about it.
Underdog and Sweet Polly Purebred, which you could never get away with as a name now, of course, was, I believe, his
Sweet Polly Pure.
That was his girlfriend.
What was the girlfriend's name?
Sweet Polly Purebred,
Why
who
couldn't
was
you?
also, I believe, a beagle.
Uh-huh.
So I suppose you could get away with the name Sweet Polly Purebred, except it's a little racist.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that when you said that, but
Yeah, she was the reporter.
She was a reporter. See, look at you. You know yours. You know
Yeah, I remember this bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're not the worst of the song.
There's a lot of
When-
cartoons that can't be.
When criminals in the world appear and break the laws that they should fear and frighten all who see or hear, the cry goes up both far and near for
Underdog! Underdog. Very good. I know
speed of lightning, roar of thunder, fighting all who rob and
That's
plunder.
what-
Underdog,
roar of thunder.
underdog, underdog.
Yeah. He was on around the same time as Bullwinkle. So some people were Bullwinkle guys and some people were underdog guys.
I was addicted
I
to Mr.
loved-
Peabody and Sherman.
So I loved Rocky and Bullwinkle because Boris and Natasha were like the most hilarious characters to me.
Yeah.
Their hijinks were epic to me.
Yeah, it was in many respects a golden age of smart cartoonery.
It was.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the last cartoons. John, how many mouths do you think Hofoco has fed in the last 33 years?
Oh, in the
Not
last
analytics?
in
We
the
can go
last-
back to last year, sure.
Yeah, well, let me talk about the last couple of years, because as wonderful as the work was in the first 25, 26, 27, 28 years, we were really centered on street service. So we served a considerably smaller cohort of people. In the last couple of years, after we started expanding food collection, and when you consider that what we're doing right now is in essence helping to support a lot of different food programs, I would say we're probably serving, roughly speaking, around 750,000 meals a year.
Wow.
And we're
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Man.
Saintly in my book.
The big thing that appeals to me is that, and it's something that's hard for me to kind of articulate as clearly as I sometimes wish, because it's ephemeral. Coalition building means the world to me. One of the things that I find is that because we're working with 50 or 60 other organizations and helping to support their programs, it's like It's a Wonderful Life. You don't know the good you do because you can't see it. If I help by supplying good food to a program that exists to work with street kids, the street kids that come to that program are gonna sit up straight and pay attention because they're getting a good meal. You know, if we're supplying food to an organization that basically works with folks who are going through an alcohol and drug rehabilitation program, it makes all the difference in the world to have a good breakfast as opposed to a shitty breakfast. And that's what to me, the way we kind of vocalize this is we say food is the way in. It's the one thing you got to do two things every day. You got to take a dump and you got to eat. You know? There is not a not-for-profit that I know of that is rooted in like, can I help you take a dump?
Not always in that order.
I don't know. It's just, Suppositories Inc. I don't know. We focus on the other important daily need. And when you start with that, and then we consider there's like a pyramid of needs. From there,
Maslow's hierarchy, even.
yeah, exactly. Bingo, bingo, bango, bongo. First a meal, and now how about a pair of shoes and a warm coat and a hat? And now how about, there's a medical van outside. Can we attend to your open wound? Can we make sure that you've got some medication you need? And now after that, do you have a place to sleep? Because we might be able to hook you up with a housing program. And now after that, maybe some therapy and some mental health services might. And now after that, maybe a job. And that's the thing. That's wellness. It's you climb the ladder, but you got to start every day. You got to have a meal.
That almost sounds like an economic bill of rights. Maybe we should get like a government that provides us some of these guaranteed
freedoms.
Really?
Roosevelt. Yes.
Yeah, Roosevelt's 4 freedoms.
Damn straight.
I gotta tell you, this was not the conversation I thought we were gonna have, but this is the conversation I wanted to have.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
It's been it's a long, twisty motherfucking road. By the way, I swear a lot, and I hope that's all right. I am the most profane, with the possible exception of Dominic Keating, actor in Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
I was actually going to compare you to Marina Sirtis, but
She's good too.
Marina's great.
She's good too. She's good too.
Yeah. So
and we're all has-beens. That's why we can get the fuck away with it.
Oh man, no. Renzo and I.
Don't tell Marina I said that.
Renzo and I. If Marina watches this podcast, that would be amazing. But Renzo and I attended.
If I thought she was, I wouldn't have called her a has-been. I'll be honest.
Renzo and I attended the first Trek to Victory for Biden thing back in October, and we loved everything Marina had to say during that event. So yeah, let's transition into our next topic. Renzo, go for it.
So I've got a thing for you just off the second Biden Trek to Victory thing that went on just last weekend for the Georgia runs as well.
Why wasn't I invited?
Well, yes, absolutely a concern. Absolutely. You're one of the most outspoken Trekkies around, right? But the thing that Marina said...
And I was on the show that killed the franchise. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that Wilson Cruz said as well, that I really wanted to bring up with you because I thought it was just a really brilliant comment from Wilson Cruz, who plays in Discovery. He said that part of the reason why Star Trek's actors are so outspoken and why they're so liberal and why they're so unafraid to be liberal is because they spend their time and their day acting in a future that already accepted all these values. So they can pretend to be in a world that already accepted these things we should have now. Right?
Yeah, I go along with that.
For you?
I would go along with that to a certain extent, except I would say that it's writ larger than that. The very nature of acting, the very essence of what we do, and I don't understand the John Voights and is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. That's what progressives do by definition. You're a progressive because you say, I believe in helping. It's a bitch to try and be a progressive because you have to say, and over there, and over there. It's a bitch.
Yeah.
But that's what actors do by definition. So I don't think it's necessarily because of the genre. It's because of the nature of what it is that we devote our lives to trying to be better at, which is empathy.
Yeah.
Well said.
That's fantastic.
So pivoting off of that, I want to remind you of a tweet. What does it mean to be a mucky or muckety muck?
A muckety muck is a big shot. I'm less mucky than Marina Sirtis. They're all. I was on the show that killed the franchise.
Right.
You say that, but I want you to know that number one, Phlox is my favorite character. I'm not trying to like kiss your ass or anything.
I have no objection to people kissing my ass.
Phlox is my favorite character, and the reason he's my favorite character, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves by talking about Star Trek now, but anyway, he's my favorite character because I always saw Phlox as sort of the galaxy weary dude who has seen it all and done it all. And here he is with these humans and like, oh, let's see what they're going to see. Ooh. And I love Phlox because he just seems to celebrate.
You know what I like about Phlox is that I played all these fucking psychopaths down there. Child molesters and serial killers. And I don't know why, but Hollywood seemed to like me as kind of a fiend. And Phlox was so much closer to me. I mean, I kind of feel like, be passionate about shit. But at the end of the day, your first obligation as a human being is to live joyfully. That's how you get shit done. And it's how you go through life without wanting to cut your throat. And I think Phlox, he wasn't as perhaps vociferous as I can be, but Phlox lived joyfully, And I think that's most Star Trek characters do, and in all honesty, because it's baked into the pie of the show. But for me as an actor, that was rather an unusual part for me to get to play.
Yeah, we have mentioned IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, on the show a lot because, I mean, we talk about Star Trek sometimes. But to me,
I tell people all the time, I was the first bisexual on Star Trek. I had 3 wives, and third, I had 3 husbands, and sometimes there were 4 of us, sometimes there were 7 of us, sometimes there were 2 of us, sometimes there was only half of us, which was me, and I didn't know how to do that. But
denobulans just wanted to fuck their brains out, didn't they?
Denobulans.
Oh, denobulans.
I can understand why
you're getting my track card now.
Under the circumstance, we were talking about masturbation, so I forgive you. But. And here's the issue. Where are you from? Dunno.
So, okay.
People on the show couldn't pronounce it. That's why we were the show that killed the franchise.
I always thought
even pronounce our own fucking culture.
Listen, you're going to ask a fantastic question, Dag. Bring it. Go for it.
I'm never going to forget it. But no, I just want to keep kissing his ass by saying, Enterprise came on right when I graduated and started going to college. And I was there every goddamn week watching that show because I was living in a 250 square foot apartment. And I was rollerblading my way to school.
Well, you were not living in, for instance, bumfuck Texas, where they canceled the show every Friday night to put on the college football game of the week. The high school game of the week. We didn't even get canceled for college football. We got canceled for fucking high school football.
But that's in Texas.
There's some place that canceled us for junior high fucking football too. I just don't know about it.
Texas is serious about their high school football.
This is one of the reasons we died. Is we were on UPN. UPN had no clout and no weight to throw around, and CBS, basically the parent company of UPN, did not extend their weight. So as a syndicated show, various markets had a lot more freedom than most markets usually have to determine whether or not they even wanted to air it. And a lot of markets simply did not air our show. So some of the reason our ratings tanked was because episodes kind of were sucky. Some of the reasons our ratings tanked is because the show would get yanked off the air from week to week, and you couldn't rely on it even being on.
Yeah, in a modern setting with streaming the way things are, I think that Enterprise would have gone on for a full 7 seasons without any issues.
It's interesting now in that a lot of people who have caught up to it on streaming, and I don't know, because people are kissing my ass because I don't know why, because I'm so attractive and my ass is my best feature. A lot of people are
I'm sure Bonnie agrees.
Bonnie would not agree. Bonnie has not recognized any of my features as being good, much less ranking them hierarchically. People have said that they actually are really coming to it and appreciating it in ways they didn't when it was first on. And I think some of that is getting to see them all sequentially. And some of it is when it aired, there was a little, I think there's probably Star Trek fatigue right now. Maybe not. But at the time, after, without a break, Next Gen, Deep Space, Voyager, our show, we didn't get even like a month off, or the creators didn't get a month off. I think the fan base was kind of like, could I just take like a year and just like, just a year?
Well, that's an interesting part though, right? Like the original air date for the first episode was September 26th of 2001, right? So you started just after like 9/11. Right. And the show very quickly was branded as being a post 9/11 Star Trek show, and that your plot lines were more friendly to Texas, even though Texas didn't want to air your episodes. Right. The inclusion of like a Southern main character was seen as being more of an outreach to try and bring in more fans. Right.
Although in point of fact, we were in production well, of course, before
for sure
happened, and the Bible was created well before 9/11 happened. I didn't think our show really grappled with 9/11 until season 3, and then it did it in a way that I considered to be problematic, in all candor. But
yes,
which I have expressed and will continue to express, even though I don't think that's necessarily a. The
Zindi attack is a very clear analog. Totally with you on that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was also, there was an episode in which the captain is going to throw somebody out of an airlock, and basically his justification is the ends justify the means. It's like, I'm sorry, but when did Dick Cheney become the captain of our ship? And I love it. And Scott doesn't write the episodes, and I love Manny Cotto. I adore Manny Cotto, and some of the very best episodes of that show were season 3. When Manny took over, he brought a breath of fresh air, I think, to that show. No slam on Brannon, no slam on Rick. they kept that franchise alive for many, many years. And I think they've done, extraordinary work, but they never got a fucking break. They were asked to get boom, right out of the gate, out of Voyager into Enterprise. I think Manny brought a certain energy to the show that really lifted it. I just, as a leftist, and Manny's not a leftist, he's a leftist in certain respects, but the part of me that kind of objects to the national security state and to a lot of the ways we have. When 9/11 happened, my first thought was, we're going to fuck this up. We're going to turn it into a war. We're going to go and attack the Middle East. Hundreds of thousands of people will die. Thousands of our own fucking people will die. We're going to waste a fortune, and it will come to naught in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying that at the time, and people were like, fuck you. It's like, yeah, well, wait and see. So that's why my nickname is Cassandra Billingsley. I'm testing your knowledge of the classics.
So
hey, that's just shut you guys down. I'm expecting you to roll with this shit. Come on.
I'm still in awe of that line. When did Dick Cheney become the captain of our ship? That's just such a good fucking line.
Well, I love Scott. I adore Scott. So don't get me wrong. And again, we don't write it. There are episodes. There's an episode where I was like, it turned out I was in the Denobulan infantry. It was like, what?
I was in the squawk. Is that a squawk?
That was a squawk. Yeah. Oh, you heard my squawk story.
I have heard the squawk story. So yes, your prophecies never to be believed, sir.
Yeah, a prophet is without honor in his own country, especially in America.
Well, I personally blame Les Moonves, but we don't have to talk about him.
Yeah. I mean, UPN. Look at UPN. What was its big show? Wrestling.
It was.
Dawn Ostroff, who I never met, and I'm sure she's a lovely woman. But Dawn Ostroff famously, I'm sure you've heard this story, but it always makes me laugh, said in season 3, is there any possibility that the Enterprise could stop on a planet and pick up, like a boy band?
What?
So
no.
I that may be
bullshit. Really? Oh man!
But I tell you, look at UPN's slate.
Well, the Rock ended up on Voyager, so we do know that there's got to be some interplay on these things.
Know, right?
UPN did not have a show that really took off because, let's see, when Enterprise aired, I was a year out of college, and you're right. UPN was supposed to be this flagship network for Star Trek, and all they had was Voyager as a hook, and then Enterprise. There was wrestling, but there was
wrestling and a bunch of crap. And when you think about how television functions, I mean, if you're a producer or a writer and you want to pitch something, you're not going to take a meeting with UPN. You don't want your show on UPN. You're not going to make any money. You'll be ghettoized, and you'll have a blot on your resume. So they couldn't buy anything.
I don't know the name of the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dag.
Oh, I was just saying, I see UPN now as sort of like a prototype for Disney Plus and all these branded streaming sites that networks are gearing towards.
Yeah, just very narrow focus niche audience, and that's all they care about, kind of thing. Yeah.
There was a show on UPN. I don't remember the name of it. This kind of tells you what it was like with UPN. The show, it was played as a comedy, took place in the 1800s.
Oh, with Charlie McBride about the Lincoln.
Legend.
What's that?
Legend with MacGyver and John Delancey?
No.
No.
It was this black man who was a slave.
Charlie McBride.
Worked in the house, and wasn't it with
he was like Lincoln's valet, and Lincoln was a boob, and Charlie McBride was the one who did everything, behind the
right.
scene.
So here's a comedy during slave days with Abe Lincoln and his.
Yeah, that was
the Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a notorious flop.
You got 9 episodes of that show, 5 of which went unaired.
Oh,
real bad. Yeah.
So I just want to make a point. If the phone rings, let's just hold on until the phone stops ringing, and then we can move forward, so we don't catch it in our.
Sorry,
dialogue. I just muted myself as soon as it rang, so it's
all good.
Can we do this raw?
I will try. Whenever they're shooting, it's like a plane goes overhead. It's just like, so a plane goes overhead. Just fucking use it.
But this is an apocalypse. There are no planes, John.
But how does that work for Game of Thrones? Because a coffee cup apparently broke the internet for a week.
You show a guy in the background going.
Man.
No, never waste a mistake.
So, John, a question for you on the politics of your crew, right? So when we've seen these various meetups of Star Trek actors and in conventions, it seems pretty unanimous that almost everyone on these shows seems to be pretty leftist, right? There's the Barkley exception. There's Roxanne Dawson, who's also very conservative. Did you guys ever have any sort of conflicts in? Oh yeah. Did you guys ever have any conflicts in your crew about like the politics that you guys espoused? Like, was that ever like a tension point or anything?
No, because in all candor, I mean, I'm really political and I'm pretty vocal. But one, I was only on the set, a couple days a week, max, and it's work. I mean, there are very few workplaces that could tolerate people coming in and kind of throwing their political elbows around. I mean, it's really not appropriate. I'm political in venues like this. And if there were people on the show who were interested in talking about politics or who read the paper or read books and wanted to gab, I was always happy to do it. But I wasn't going to fucking elbow my way into a big conversation and make an issue out of it. And generally speaking, not too many of the other cast members were that. I don't want to say that they aren't politically conscious, but I don't think there were that many people on the show who were like burned with a political
guns blazing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Right on. I wanted to ask, and this is sort of like a segue two-parter, like what issues are the most pressing, do you think, facing the U.S. right now? And what hopes do you have for the Biden administration to live up to them, if any?
Well, I mean, I think the first issue, and I think it has to do with the nature of the fairness doctrine and what happened with the FCC, is that basically we have, there is there's no way to stop people from lying in the media. And so to the extent that we now live in a world in which it is possible for a good portion of the population to believe in complete untruths, what used to exist were mechanisms to fight that. Those mechanisms no longer structurally exist. If it was up to me and I could snap my fingers, I would say money in politics and some version of the fairness doctrine needs to return to force liars on television, on the radio, and using social media to not lie anymore or pay the fucking price. I don't know the answer to those questions because I don't have, unfortunately, a lot of belief that either money is going to be removed from politics, big money, dark money, nor do I see us moving back to an age in this, world of gajillion media sources of finding a way to differentiate between truth and chicanery. So I don't have an answer for it, but I think that's probably a lot of what to me lies at the heart of our current dilemma.
To just do what Machiavelli said in The Prince, if you lie in public, you're forced to defend your position or you get executed. That's actually a little too.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if I had an immediate political solution, it would be abolish the Electoral College.
Yes, please.
And if I had a secondary political solution, but this is something the Supreme Court has backed away from. It's, to me, redistricting was, of all the things that the Supreme Court's done that are pernicious in the last few years, the thing that to me has been the most pernicious has been the fact that they vitiated the Civil Rights Amendment and that they have gone out of their way to essentially say, we don't want to have anything to do with how states regulate their voting habits. So they have basically allowed states to do any number of pernicious, of all the things that gets me fucking furious, is to see the Republican Party talk about chicanery in the elections when it's the Republicans that have practiced voter suppression for years. Across a swath of 14 states, what they've essentially done is they've eliminated polling stations. They've made it impossible for people who are poor and people who are living in poor circumstances to vote without having to stand in day-long lines. Fuck you, Wilbur.
It's projection, right? Gaslight, obstruct, and project. That's what their party has become synonymous with at this point, right?
It is fascistic. I mean, and the problem with using the word fascism is that one immediately thinks of of the concentration camps, and you go to the end result of fascism, which is what happened in Nazi Germany, as opposed to the nature of what the fascist philosophy is, which is rooted in extreme nationalism, demonizing a political enemy, making them seem subhuman and beyond the pale, which opens the door to then restrict protecting their political rights. That is what fascism is ultimately about. It's about maintaining power by demonizing an enemy and giving yourself permission to do whatever the fuck you want with them. And we are living right now in a country where a lot of people support fascism.
And when we think about that, you're right. We look at the end result and compare that to what's happening now, and that's used as the argument that, well, we're not a fascist country.
Yeah.
That's because you're thinking about the end result of where it got to the war, the concentration camps, et cetera, whereas we're starting on that and moving forward to that. And which brings me to another point about the big money and dark money being in the pockets of our lawmakers. I was talking to my son one day in the van. We just have these random conversations. Somehow we started talking about electric cars. And he asked, he said, why aren't there more electric cars around? And I said, well, it's because there's too much money tied in still to gas and oil. If not for that, we would have electric cars probably everywhere. But because there are a lot of people that are making money off of, all these oil barons, et cetera, it's going to be very hard to push our technology and push ourselves to the next level. And it's because you've got people accumulating wealth, the 1% that want their money. And if they stand to lose profit by going to electric cars off of gasoline, they will do anything and everything they can to keep that from happening. And so that's why we're still more or less stuck where we are, and really just barely getting a lot of these auto manufacturers to start playing ball and produce these cars.
I think, I sometimes catch myself, there's much that is extraordinarily admirable about America and about our system and about the Constitution. And I have every respect for what it is that you can point to over the long arc of American history and say, wow, this is something that could have only happened here because of aspects of our system that helped us grow. Other aspects of our system have done nothing but suppress people's rights. And it's a strange fucking combination of good and evil. I think there are aspects, if you look at hundreds of years of American history, there are aspects of what we've adopted as a free enterprise capitalist system that have helped to bring incredible technologies to the forefront that have raised the standards of living for undoubtedly billions of people around the globe. We have done so much to lead the way, to help eradicate many diseases, to help lift people out of poverty, and I recognize that. So I think it's really important to always maintain that human capacity to keep opposite ideas in your brain at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But this was nonetheless a constitution written by slaveholders for slaveholders, and that's baked into the structure. And to a certain extent, the rich are always going to have more power. Roosevelt said that progressives get one whack at the pinata for every 4 that leftists get, because the system demands that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Wasn't there? There are other countries that rewrite their constitution every so often, maybe every.
We amended the shit out of it for years. It's just of late we're so politically sclerotic. I mean, how many amendments have been introduced to the Constitution? I mean, a buttload. Well into the latter half of the 20th century, we're amending the Constitution.
It certainly needs to be rewritten, because look at who wrote it and how far we've come in the 200 plus years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to rewrite that bad boy.
When people talk about originalism, I mean, this Scalia bullshit about originalism, it's like originally, the only people who could vote were rich white guys who owned land.
So one of the things that we need to remember, though, is even those founders that were slave owning white males believed that the Constitution should be rewritten regularly. Like Jefferson thought we should trash it and rewrite it every 10 years regularly, maybe every 20. So we've done
pretends a bit much. But...
Although I have to say, Jefferson is one of the guys that I think is like, boy, the more you read about Jefferson, the more you go,
yeah,
he was kind of a sorry ass motherfucker in a lot of ways. I mean, some great ideas, but he was one of the most politically naive in certain respects of our founders. He believed that we were going to be an agrarian economy until the very end, and that consequently we didn't have to worry about, Hamiltonian, pish posh about a national bank and an industrial policy and a trade policy. We don't need that. It's all yeoman farmers. I don't know. Jefferson's one of those guys. The more you read about Jefferson, it's like, really? All right.
I mean, he did spend a lot of time with the French, and he certainly stayed away during the actual revolutionary fighting. Not to say that he would not have fought, but he was not there for the fighting. So yeah, he definitely had a bit of a.
He fled the capital of Virginia famously at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, but he definitely had that ivory tower opinion on things.
Yeah, I mean, still a genius. I mean,
for sure.
They were such. I just think Madison is the guy that's kind of like, of all of them, it's like, he was probably the guy that had the kind of dweebiest personality. So if you think about what he actually did, I mean, it's like, fuck, man.
That's a good point.
So there's a show that you were on called The West Wing. Small show, not that big a deal, right?
I've heard of it. Yes. It was about water ballet, as I recall. Yes, I played one of the lead ballerinas in one of the episodes.
And you were wonderful in it. In fact, you were in a scene. Oh, yes.
Yes.
PAs and such. Yes. Anyways, you were in a fantastic scene talking about the importance of things like adjusting maps and not using the Mercator projection. Now, I have a bit of a history in geography and such, so that's something I'm a bit familiar with. Did you find that you learned that from the show, or did you already know about social justice as a part of using maps? Right? You are so educated. I wasn't sure which way you'd come on.
I knew something about it. I didn't know that much about it, but I knew something about it. I knew that that had been. I knew the argument existed. Yeah.
And just for anyone in our audience, listening or watching, wondering, okay, what are you talking about with the maps? That's the whole thing where our maps have countries that are much larger than they're supposed to be, and also ones that are showing smaller than they really are. And so what happens is that skews representation or it skews
our
perception of yes. So there's a lot of areas, a lot of states that are
Africa is so much fucking bigger than we realize.
Yes.
But the map makers shrink it in size.
There was a line you had in that scene about where's Germany? Well, it's not where you think it is.
Yeah.
And now they have adopted the Peters map, I believe, in the Boston school system, or is it Massachusetts writ large?
So in Miami, we had multiple maps, and they would specifically show us here's the Mercator, and here's why it's shitty. Here's your Peterson projection. Here's why it's much better. But better than all those, have a globe, right? So they were a bit smart ass about it in Miami.
Now, the one thing that I suspect that I learned in school in Mr. Bowditch's class is he made us learn how to read a fucking map.
Ooh.
And that's the thing that I think is really, probably lost. It's like,
well, yeah, you can Google.
Yeah. It's like, here, kid, here's a road map. Get me from blank to blank, figure out how
down the street.
Yeah. Figure out how long it's going to take. Figure out an alternate route. God forbid on a global map. Or here's a map in a foreign language. Figure that out.
Mm-mm.
And here I live in shame because I live off my GPS. I can't get anywhere without it at this point.
Well, we all do, but that's one of the things I think that's sort of I'm a strange combination of a Luddite and a technologist. I suck at all technology. I can barely tie my shoes, but I appreciate, caring a lot about history, that we are where we are because of the advance of technologies. None of us would want to live in 1633. We'd all be dead by now in all likelihood. Where the people, if they live to 35, were like old fucking men, for the most part. So I respect all that. But what has happened is that none of us could hitch a horse to a plow.
Mm-hmm.
None of us could fix a jalopy. None of us could build a house. None of us could do a gajillion things that people. There's a wonderful book called the Shop Work as Soulcraft, and the argument there is that we have so lost, and I'm the epitome of this. We've so lost our capacity to do things that for generations were absolutely integral to life and to a certain extent to the development of the human character, because they taught people to build things slowly and meticulously. We now are an instant gratification world in which we expect to get from A to B just like that. I'll click a button, boom, boom, boom. And I think it's one of the reasons we are fucked up.
Yeah, you could argue that that's the actual like end result of capitalism, right? Like when capitalism's primary drive is to make things more efficient and cheap, then things become so efficient and so cheap that they are instant, and that changes the way society behaves, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if I had to build a log cabin, I would be screwed. And with the GPS thing, there was a time I missed an exit by about a good probably half hour because I did not realize that Google Maps had froze up on my phone. Because the phone's sitting over here on the seat, and I have my headphones on, which will give you, in 2 miles, take your dumb ass here. And I started thinking, wait a minute, I think I should have gotten to this exit by now. So I look at my phone and it locked up. So I was going to the ends of nowhere because of the technology. It gave up on me.
It's great for bar bets. I mean, there's nothing better than being at a bar and say, oh, yeah, well, I know who won the Oscar in 1933 for Best Supporting Actress. And you get $10 right there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Great for that.
That's great. I love that.
It's incredible to me. Sometimes we do these like head guesses. Everybody asks, if a historical figure from the founding of the United States came to America today, what would they think? And we all like to sit there and think, well, we have shopping malls and streets and cars and all these other things. That guy'd be arrested so quick because he just wants to hunt his food and go stumble onto somebody else's land and build a house right away.
No. Imagine the conversation. Imagine the conversation with the founders about like, so you guys made the Electoral College, and when you did, you made it so that every state only had 2 senators for each one, and that was part of the representation. How would you feel about California with 55 million people only having 2 senators in the Senate? Like, and the first question would be, California, what now? 55 million, right. What now? So,
and their senators were supposed to be senators were appointed. That was one of the constitutional amendments, which brought, and there's some people want to go back to having them appointed again. It's like, no, not backwards, jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man.
You're not going to ask me any Star Trek shit, which is interesting because this is the first podcast I've ever been on where I've really not talked about Star Trek.
Yes.
Quote it, publish it.
I know. It's like you're not. It's like you don't want to know.
You want to bore you with the same questions you
Linda's secret vices or any of that shit.
I tried to mention like in the call, like we try to go beyond and just get to the nitty gritty of you.
I'm not complaining. It's just making me laugh. It's like I'm just
awesome.
Awesome. We definitely wanted to give you a different experience because I'm sure there are some questions that you're probably, if I get asked this one more time, I'm going to lose it. So it was like, okay. I'm roll with the punches. I usually just shift the answer into a realm I'm more.
We also have a whole Star Trek section at the bottom of the document we're referencing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. We'll get there when we get there.
I'm not pushing you. I'm happy to shoot the shit about anything under the sun.
We love it.
Let's transition.
Clearly, you have no Republican listeners, or if you did, you do not anymore.
I think we lost them all.
Yeah,
they're gone. There were 2 of them. They left.
We partnered with an organization called Trek the Vote back in October. It's different than the Biden victory.
Yeah, I did that.
So we know one of the people who sponsored that. We partnered with them, and it was supposed to be this like partisan neutral organization. Just get out and vote. Get out and vote. Get out and protect people voting.
Wink, wink. Yeah.
And I mean, I did an interview with Tay Phoenix. That's the person. The contact. I did an interview with her directly, and definitely not a red bone in either of our bodies. So that was obvious.
I grew up. I'm 60. I remember Jacob Javits and Nelson Rockefeller and a whole cadre. Lowell Weicker was my senator from Connecticut. There was once upon a time a strain of moderate, northeastern, maybe even by our contemporary standards, liberal Republican senators, just as there were, like
dogs.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I think, unfortunately, we've lost is that there were within a party, there was such a wide range of political expression that a party could not go to an extreme. It had to keep a bigger tent by definition. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the Republican Party. I think the Democratic Party has, if nothing else, by sheer dint of the fact that it's now become the catch-all for almost everybody who's not a lunatic.
No, it reminds me of that line from that other franchise. The more you crush your fist, or whatever he says, she says, the
more you tighten your fist.
Systems.
I see Steve Schmidt actually now has become a Democrat. Did you see that today?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
but it's just what's happening. They're catering to their fringe constituents, and the sensible people among them are going, fuck that.
Yeah, and in catering to their fringe constituents, they're making it impossible for them to win elections, so they have to cheat.
Right.
That's
what I was going to say again.
And then complain when the cheating doesn't work.
Yeah, and so they have become, by their only way to survive is like Mike Lee. Did you see the senator from Utah who effectively said that democracy, that's not the most important thing. No, prosperity is much more important than democracy. It's like
amazing.
Get out. Just get the fuck out.
Like the guy at Nestle who said, water's not a right.
I got to tell you this, because I'm sorry, Dad, go ahead.
I think Renzo had something he wanted to say earlier.
Just a quick thing. So one of those people that used to be, under modern circumstances, would definitely not be Republican, but Eisenhower's platform is much more liberal than anything running right now.
Yeah.
Right?
The 1951 platform. Yeah.
It's
wasn't
amazing
that before
how
the party switch?
It doesn't even matter.
It was before the flip.
But he was still seen as the more Republican or the more conservative of the two he was running that year. And that was in 52, right? When that was a big deal. So
he was running against Truman.
Right. I read fairly recently in something that for a period of time into the 50s, people, when polled, could not actually define the difference between the Republican and the Democratic parties.
Oh,
so there was a period of time, and it was a function of the fact that after FDR and after the New Deal, the Republican Party effectively had to, particularly I think it reached its apotheosis under Eisenhower, they really had to embrace the concept of a Keynesian world and a modern industrial economy in which labor and management coalesced and worked together. When it came down to brass tacks, Republicans and Democrats basically believed the same fucking shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was this year, these last few years, well, especially this election, the parties have become so polarized that I can't recall any time, and it's not like I've been around a while. I'm 43, but I can tell you that this is one of those things that people were questioning their families, their friendships, their neighbors, everything that you wouldn't have done maybe in the past. And there's a neighbor of ours, and the neighborhood I live in now is the one I grew up in. So, and there's not a lot of turnaround in families in this neighborhood. So basically there's a lot of people that are the first or maybe second homeowners since the 60s. So there's a neighbor of ours who's been around since the subdivision was created. Nicest people, great. I went to school with their youngest son, graduated together in their house, just the nicest people, not a bad bone in their body. So one day I'm going out on a walk with my kids. We're going to go to the park, and they had a Trump sign in their yard. And that kind of, I stopped, and my first reaction was, okay, well, not talking to them anymore. That's, and it was odd because, my dad basically said, oh, well, that's it for them. I'm like, but Dad, you've known them for 100 years. I mean, one sign in the yard, but it really makes you think. And it's kind of like, I felt conflicted. Like, okay, do I still wave to them when we're outside?
It's a bitch.
What do I do?
What do you do? Because it's 74 million people. And I don't think that 74 million Americans are assholes. I think
they can't be.
This is what I honestly think is that, and I think most historians would agree with this, that a relatively small slice of America is extremely political.
Mm-hmm.
The great vast majority of Americans really reject politics. They wish it didn't exist. They view it as fundamentally problematic. And so they do not know very much about policy issues. They do not know a lot about how the political system works. They're responding purely emotively from election to election on the basis of what feels right. And people are going to be extremely swayable on emotional terms if they aren't particularly keyed in to the intricacies of policy and politics. And I think that's one of the reasons that America is, all human beings are susceptible to demagogues. Most people don't know that much about bupkis.
Yeah.
They live in their lives, you know. It's like, what do I need to know to go about my day? I need to know how to do my job. I need to know how to take care of my kids. I need to know, you know, what I need to do to make sure that my household doesn't fall around me. I have to repair the roof today, yada yada. How do I pay this bill? They don't know fucking bullshit about, you know, medical plans and single payer and yada yada yada. And what do they hear? Blah 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 blah. Somebody comes on the scene that kind of like stirs them by getting them on an emotional level. It's like, oh. You know
what they hear? I'll tell you what they hear. They hear my taxes are going to go up so that this guy over here can have health care. No, it's about me. Yeah. Unless this happens.
What they're not hearing is somebody else's taxes are going up so I can have health care.
Right. No, it's not, it's all about, we don't want to benefit someone else, even if it's to our detriment. And that's how it takes us back to the education. I think that we are trying to keep people dumber coming out of school so that they don't know any better.
But this is where I get kind of like, you know, I scratch my head all the time. It's like, is this historically anomalous, or is this how it's always been? You know? I mean, you go back and you look at what was our most, you know, perhaps successful period of American history, and you could argue that it was, you know, Roosevelt's New Deal into the 40s and into the 50s, but that was predicated on a partnership between the Deep South and the progressive North. And we made this devil's compact. Hey, South, we'll electrify you. We'll build dams for you. We'll show you our milk teat, and we'll help build you up. In return, you vote for our legislation, and we will not stop you from lynching black people.
Right.
That was the compact in our country.
Wow. Yeah.
So when we talk about, you know, this, you know, horror that is America these days, there's that shit show has been with us for you know, from the get-go. Even at our best, we've been at our worst.
Yes.
That's what Lyndon Johnson said with the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. He said, I have given the Republican Party power for a couple of generations because I have broken the devil's compact.
Oh, wow. That's kind of thing that just rocks you and changes how you think. Yeah, I like that.
Eleanor Roosevelt was like always with Franklin. It was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Why don't you speak up? Why don't you say something about the anti-lynching legislation that you're letting the South kill in the Senate? And Roosevelt said, I can either get something done, and the cost of that is going to be the black man will suffer, or I can object and I will lose my presidency, and the black man will suffer. And it's one thing for a New England progressive to say, well, then I guess you have no choice. It's another thing for a black man to say, that's the fucking choice.
Yes, right. I totally get that. I do.
You know, I mean, that's
it's hard to think of it that way, but you're right.
Politics is full of Faustian bargains, right? Like that's kind of the choices we're stuck with sometimes.
Yeah. And for a white guy, that Faustian bargain is an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm making a Faustian bargain. It's like, no, you're not. You're not making a Faustian bargain. You're not giving up shit.
Yeah. Reminds me of a line from a Metallica song, wash your back so you don't stab mine.
May I transition us into a less dark topic?
Oh,
yes, pull us out of the darkness.
Excellent. Good luck. Nobody's listening now.
I know, right? Everyone's
like 3 guys, and it's you listening to this podcast.
First, you killed Enterprise. Now you killed Beyond Trek Podcast.
Now, if you're going to talk about, I told you to start with the frivolous shit. You didn't.
That's fine.
If you want to move to frivolous shit, just air it backwards.
Yeah.
Edit in reverse.
John, we questions just for you and how you got into the industry. Renzo, I believe you could kick us off.
Yeah, so I did some thinking on you, and it sounds like you originally wanted to be a writer. Like you had more intentioned on being behind the scenes, either writing scripts or writing books, and you're such a huge reader, it wouldn't just surprise me if you did both. So what led to you actually getting stuck in front of the camera, though we know you love doing it? How did you get there?
Well, I when I went to college, which I didn't want to do, I just wanted to be I wanted to be a bum, and my parents would have none of it. They insisted I go to college, so I only applied to girls' schools, and I got into Bennington College, which had a great lit department, although what appealed to me at the time was the female to male ratio. I had not factored in homosexuality. There were more gay guys than I anticipated. And
whoops.
So the ratio was somewhat skewed, but I digress. I had the good fortune and the misfortune to study with some of the world's great writers, including Bernard Malamud. And good fortune in that, oh my God, what a great opportunity to study with Bernard Malamud. Misfortune because at 19 years old, it's like, it's like if they'd thrown me into an acting class with Olivier, I wouldn't have become an actor. Having learned the difference at an early age between what it means to take writing very seriously and being like, this is funny. I fled. And I fled to the acting department. I'd always been an actor. And we had a wonderful acting department, but it didn't quite strike me as, as much of a gulf between what was achievable and my level of talent. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of what got me started as somebody who had more professional aspirations in that direction than in writing. I was on the fence between both of them growing up because I was a big reader, loved to write, loved to read, loved to act, I wouldn't say I love to write. I did write a lot, but acting, it's also social. It's like you're not going to get laid as a writer. You're at a carol, right? Actors get to go out and have drinks with the pretty gals in the casting. Mm-hmm. So that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, you could have been an Ernest Hemingway. I'm certain he got laid all over.
I knew instinctively I was not going to be an Ernest Hemingway. I was like, I didn't want to be a Truman Capote, but I knew I wasn't going to be an Ernest Hemingway.
That's a very high bar. The writers would have a much higher bar for that than actors.
Not everybody can write a book about talking at your own hand.
Yeah. No, and I think it now. I mean, it's always that silly game where you kind of think if you could do your life over, yeah, probably if push comes to shove, my greatest, if I had worked to my greatest potential, I probably should have been a writer.
Okay.
But I was social. Two, I was lazy. And it's a lot harder to discipline yourself when nobody else is cracking the whip to sit down and write every day. If you're an actor, you have no choice. You got to go to rehearsal.
Yeah.
So the enforced discipline made a big difference.
Right on. One of our co-hosts was unable to make it. She had some questions here that I'm going to just throw out there. First of all, we want to brag about this. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's a role-playing game for Star Trek called Star Trek Adventures. And every Tuesday night, me and our co-host Watney, we do a Twitch stream with some other players, and we just
stream is, but that sounds very good.
It's like a live stream. It's just people playing games live, and we play in the Star Trek universe. And in one of the games we played, she was inspired by your performance to play a Denobulan.
Well pronounced.
And her Denobulan was a doctor named Alel and got us out of a bunch of jams. But she was inspired to be in that role because she likes playing doctors. She's played doctors in some of our other role plays. So her question is, speaking of being drawn to roles, you have a tendency to play doctors, Out of Time, True Blood, Angel, Stargate SG-1, the aforementioned West Wing, Masters of Sex, Twin Peaks.
Well,
she wrote it all down for me. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to play sumo wrestlers. It's more a process of elimination. Think of all the things you're not going to cast me as. There's not much left other than brainiacs.
She's like, she gets this is a self-inflicted typecast of sorts. And ironically, in Scrubs, you played a patient instead of a doctor.
Right. A drunk.
But what attracts you to these types of characters, and what informs those characters?
Completely random.
Cool.
The only thing I would say is two things that operate. One is your cast largely based on your physical type. I am nobody's Hulk. Nobody is going to cast me on the basis of, oh, that guy projects power. He's scary, purely because of his physicality. I'm not going to play the senator. I'm not going to play the bodyguard. I'm not going to play any kind of version of a tough guy. What they're going to cast me for is verbal facility. So I'm going to play intellectuals. I'm going to play doctors. I'm going to play brainiacs. I'm going to play guys who can, yabber. And in television, umpteen% of the guys they think are brainiacs have a doctorate or a PhD next to their names. So it's no penchant of mine or no particular ooh, I really want to express my deepest self by playing doctors because I always wanted to be a doctor. Nothing to do with it. Totally random.
Do you kind of just go with that then? I know typecasting is kind of frowned upon, but do you find yourself on the side of, well, I can either be typecast or I can be stubborn and try to fight that and play roles that really aren't me just to make a point? Or is I'm going to go with it?
If you want as an actor, and it was a decision I had to make, if you want as an actor to elbow out more roles for yourself, then you have to be in really good physical shape. And I'm not. And I never had any particular interest, I'm afraid, because I'm a lazy sucker in doing the things that are required. It's like, you got to go to the gym for hours every day. If I wanted to pitch myself for other kinds of roles, I could have gotten a hair weave. I could have capped my teeth. I could have lifts in my shoes. I could have lost 40 pounds. I could go into a room and compete for the guy who's the head of a law firm.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get that part. I'll audition for it. And I'll do a good audition, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of Hollywood's unfortunate but understandable penchant to cast on the basis of an immediate physical, immediate visual hit is bullshit. I mean, to me, every character is first and foremost a person, and a complicated person who's trying to play an action in a scene, who's trying to achieve something, achieve a goal. I look at a part and think of it in active terms. What's this guy fighting for? What are the circumstances that dictate his approach to going after what he's going after? What's the backstory that supports that? And I don't think twice about what the fuck the guy looks like, because it's out of my control.
Right.
That's not how Hollywood works. That's why every woman over the age of 40 has to get, bajillion dollars worth of fucking plastic surgery. It's ironic being an actor, because you would probably not meet a lot of people who give a flying fuck. I'm not phrasing this correct. I don't give a flying fuck about what I look like or what people look like. Physical appearance means nothing to me. I don't care about clothing. I don't care about cars. I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care about it.
You're comfortable in your own skin.
And yet I am an actor, and an actor has to be obsessed with physical appearance, or at least extremely cognizant of what his physical appearance means.
I didn't want to go back into the darkness.
Sorry. I made a nice living at something that I love the work. I really like the work. I like to figure out how to make a scene work. I like the acting challenge. But the industry itself, and what the industry, I think, kind of in a weird way stands for, is sort of anathema to me. You can't make a living in a theater.
Right. Well, isn't your physical appearance also something that's probably written into your contract for a show? Because I've had this. There's a friend of mine, Ben, who is an actor out in Hollywood. And I've talked to him about this before, and he said, if you're on a show, you do, say, you grow a beard or you have one or whatever, you can't change your physical appearance without, I guess, jumping through some hoop.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you can't. Yeah, no, you're not going to be able to show up one day on the set with a beard. It's like, no, the character doesn't have a beard. You're not going to be able. You're not going to be able to go and have a haircut because you feel like you have shorter hair. But what is not going to be in my contract is you have to stay at 180 pounds of beefcake, John.
You could have been Chris Evans. You could have been Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
No, if that was in my contract, I would just show up with 180 pounds of ground beef and be like, fuck off.
Well, when LeVar Burton...
I watched the paycheck, though, you understand. That's
right, yeah.
Having made the decision to get into this field, I just as soon get paid.
Well, LeVar Burton had to ask to grow a goatee he wanted a goatee for his wedding. So during TNG, if you remember, there was an episode one episode that Jordy had this goatee and had asked for that. Jonathan Frakes shows up between seasons, just some random, like, I've got a beard, I'm just here for rehearsals, I'm going to shave it later. And they told him, no, you're keeping that. So I had to keep it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it generally speaking, once they buy it, they own you. So they can, they can like, in that, for instance, say, oh, well, we wouldn't have thought about this, but that beard's great. Keep it. If they didn't like it, it'd be like, no, shave that.
Right. Now you got to keep it. Hopefully you like it, because
yes, exactly. That's why I would never show up with a beard.
Right.
Now, did you have any trouble with that?
Yeah.
Did you have any trouble with that? Something that you wanted to do or considering doing, but just got poo-pooed by the, no? Okay.
No, I mean, I would, Bob Picardo famously, of course, as would go in like, every Tuesday, and he would pitch, he's an opera singer. And Bob is great and brilliant and relentless. So eventually he wore them the fuck down, and they just let him do whatever he wanted. I am far too lazy for that. If I bumped into Brandon at Crafty one day, I'd say, hey, Brandon, I got this great idea. I lost like 20 pounds, which I did in like season 3. How about we give Dr. Phlox a tapeworm, and they have to pull it out of his ass, and they throw it out the porthole, and it wraps around the ship. How about that?
I read that.
They used that in the opening scenes for a new Star Trek show, right? Lower Decks. They essentially have a tapeworm attached to the ship from the outside in one of the in the opening credits for it.
There you go. I didn't get credit. No, it's like when Dr. Phlox, when he went into hibernation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would take credit for a bunch of things that I just said around the Crafty table that I think maybe people want.
There's a great scene in Enterprise where Dr. Phlox is just nonchalantly taking care of sickbay naked.
Yes. Now, I did
was that your idea?
Yeah. Well, here's the story behind that. Is that at a party? I can't remember the name of the guy.
Why does it all have to start with "it happened at a party"?
Find on your magical like computery type device the name of the guy who wrote that episode. Chris Black, a dear friend of mine. I don't know if he wrote the episode, but he was in on this. I love Chris Black. He's a great guy. He wrote, I think, in the first season, maybe the first 2 seasons. But
it was a night in sick bay, right?
No, this was in the 3rd season when we were everybody on the ship was in hibernation, and I was running the ship all by myself.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, not a night in sick bay. Okay.
And I was walking around naked, and this happened because Chris Black at a party, I was like making fun of Jolene and Trip. It was like, how come you got everybody in the fucking show running around in their underpants, and me, it's like I'm always in pajamas. Why don't you show my body off? Come on, flaunt it, baby. You got it. And he said, you wouldn't do it. And I said, take all my clothes off, baby. I'll show you. So some years later, this episode comes up.
Were you bluffing and he took it?
I was totally not bluffing. No, I was totally not bluffing. But I said, I think I should walk in the door of sick bay, and I should turn sharply to the left, and all the way across the room, a flower pot should hit the ground.
We didn't expect this kind of big dick energy on Beyond Trek, but here we are.
They kind of looked at me for a second like they didn't understand it, and then they went, oh, no.
He's an alien, right?
Have you seen his tongue? Have you seen his tongue?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So other shows got away with stuff that's pretty similar to that, right? Like Babylon 5 had a character with like 6 tentacles that were essentially his organs for that, and he uses them to like cheat at cards, like he uses them prehensilely.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think
Londo.
I think what's the show? My face is in back of you. What's the show? Is it
Orville? Yeah.
I think the Orville. I think was trying to. That's gone now, isn't it? Did it get rid?
No, it's got a 3rd season coming up on Hulu.
Oh, good. Yep. I mean, I think they're trying to walk that line where it's like they have enough lowbrow to
They don't have the stick up their ass that Star Trek tends to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's because Seth MacFarlane is running it. I mean, and he's not he's not a stick up your ass kind of guy.
Pretty irreverent.
Right. Although it's very interesting in a weird way, because I mean, as opposed to say what Discovery is doing or what Picard is doing, where they're trying to kind of like rough up Star Trek. I mean, what Seth is doing is really kind of like doing, your daddy's Star Trek, but with fart jokes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting. Some people dig it, and some people think it's like, what the fuck?
Well, it really hits a lot of beats of TNG. There are a lot of
And look at who's writing for it. I mean, Brandon's writing for it, and Andre Vermont's
Right.
writing for it.
Some of the issues they tackle reminded me of Next Generation.
Yes, it's very much in line, I think, with what Star Trek does, both well and sometimes kind of like, you know, in a maudlin way. It's like, you know, let's advance the social issue du jour and make the episode about it. And sometimes it hits, and sometimes it feels like it's a little, you know, wah wah.
Yeah, I think it's actually unfair to call it a parody of Star Trek. I think it's really an homage to Star Trek. The Orville as a whole, or as a whole, rather.
It is. It's an homage with fart jokes. You know,
Fart jokes and blue guys who ejaculate out their eyeballs.
Oh my God! Why did you? I almost had that out of my memory, but thank you.
I mean, it was odd in that the episode I was on had the B story, which I think was Jason Alexander was the kind of the replacement for the security officer who had like some of his not excretory organs, but his he ingested on the outside of his body.
Yes,
and that was kind of like. My story was completely old school, like Star Trek, without any jokes at all. It was like, I'm on the Orville and I don't get a fucking joke.
I know, right? Sorry, Dag, you're muted.
Yeah, it's tradition. Seth, if you're watching this, we've got, you know, things to do.
If you're watching this, Seth supposedly does a brilliant Dr. Phlox impersonation.
Oh.
And I couldn't get him to do it for me.
What? Really?
All right. Yeah.
He's probably he
did not, by the way, this gets me. He did not like cast me because it was like, oh, this is cool. We got Bob Picardo, and now let's get John Billingsley, you know, whose character I can impersonate to be on the show. Oh no. I just got randomly called in to fucking audition. And I got the part, but it was like, Seth.
I know, right?
The phone works. Come on.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. If you're listening or watching, and
he's not watching. If he and Marina Sirtis are watching this together, I called her a has-been, and I'm calling you out, Seth, for not having the guts to do your fucking Dr. Phlox impersonation on the set when I'm.
Well, and that's what I want to address. If the regular audience is listening or watching this, and you're social media savvy, head over to whatever you want to use and make the hashtag trend Phlox Seth and let it go, and let's get Seth MacFarlane to do that impression.
Film it. Film it
publicly.
Film it, MacFarlane.
There's nothing happening. It's COVID, so just do it.
Yeah.
Right. You've got nothing else to do, right?
Yeah. Come on. I only have 12,500 followers. I need some more fucking followers.
So we're diving into Enterprise now. We're there.
We're there. Okay.
There's not a ton, but
all right. So Linda's secret vices. Did anybody? Oh, I asked that. What were Linda's secret vices? Yeah, she didn't have any. Fuck.
Okay.
Aww,
she seems she seems very straight-laced on every interview I've seen of her. She seems really.
That was years. I'm sure she's got vices now, but she didn't at the time. If she had vices, they were really, really secret. So.
I'm sorry, Dag. Okay. I was just going to ask. So this was earlier. Why do you feel that the second season episode Regeneration was, in your opinion, the one that you felt killed the show?
I'm being somewhat facetious. I think there were a lot of episodes in the second season that people kind of went, ugh. I think there were certain people who felt like bringing the board back smacked of jumping the shark, given, you know, and I'm not a Star Trek purist, so don't confuse me with don't shoot the messenger. I think there were people who felt like you're making a hash of a timeline. It's a desperate attempt to try and juice the show by bringing back the uber villain, even though it doesn't really fit into this world. You don't really own what the board mean by, you know, one, letting the Doctor actually unborgify himself, and nobody else could fucking do it.
Right. Yeah.
And letting them get and frankly letting us if not defeat them, at least basically, you know, evading them as easily as we did.
Let you survive.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like Borg light to a certain
yes.
in certain people's eyes. And
I love that episode. I'm just going to re-say that.
I thought it was fun too.
I'm only articulating what some people.
Right. Well, and some people have been thinking like that since TNG came out.
Some people say, you know, say that.
I have images of magazines on my phone that I like to post when people are like, Star Trek Discovery is ruining Star Trek. And I'm like, here's an article from 1986. Star Star Trek: The Next Generation is gonna ruin Star Trek.
Yes.
It's like they've been there forever. The haters will always be there.
By the way, I changed my background. Look at how Byronic I looked when I was a young child.
Oh, wow.
Wouldn't you want to tap that? I don't know why.
You could have been a Chris Evans or a Chris Hemsworth. You could have been.
know. It's
Yeah.
like at the time, I thought I was like this ugly, pimply, like, you know.
No, that's a handsome guy right there.
I know. And I look at my picture now and it's like, oh, if only I'd known what a catch I was. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that photo with us.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Manny Cotto. So
Is it Cotto?
is it Cotto or Cotta? I'm not sure.
It's C-O-T-O, and I've perhaps been mispronouncing his name for years. I always pronounced it Koto, but maybe it's Cotto.
You might be right.
It may be
Manny.
You've
I
met the
called
guy.
him Manny. I figured I can't go wrong. How else could you pronounce Manny? So Manny.
it could be my Midwestern accent. You know, we say things differently.
Let's just call him Manny.
Manny. I always felt that when he came into season 3,
Yep.
that a lot of people did not like that whole season storyline. Me personally, I thought it was fine. And then the 4th season really picked up steam, and he had these stories that really started going back and connecting some things, like the whole Klingon look and
the perversity of season 3, before we talk about season 4, the perversity of season 3 is that while I did not like the socio-political context, the Zindi and what it signified about, you know, our bloodlust and our need for vengeance, blah, 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 blah. But what I think it did in individual episodes was it created a tension that was sorely lacking in the show. As an example, there was an episode called Similitude, where we cloned Trip.
Yes.
That was amazing.
The urgency of having to make the decision as to whether we should clone him and then kill the clone was predicated on we have this bigger mission.
Right.
In that sense, what season 3 did that was necessary was it created a ticking clock. Even when I thought the Zindi arc itself was problematic, I thought the ticking clock was smart.
There was a ticking clock the entire time, and I don't think it fit that they made the opening theme song more upbeat at the start of probably, you know, one of the darkest
season.
Yeah, the darkest season here. Let's make this opening theme song more upbeat. But so what I was going to
Just be glad we didn't have a boy band, baby.
Oh my God, yes.
That's such a good
It's been a long way.
Oh, I'm gonna have nightmares about that.
Got us started.
So, but you're right. I think that had they not dicked around with the schedule, how they were airing, because I remember that it was almost impossible to keep up with Enterprise because it was this football game or that sport or whatever. It was preempted here or pulled there. And it really seemed like by the time
we were on Death Watch, the only reason we got renewed for a 3rd, much less a 4th season, is because they weren't ready to kill UPN. And they needed content. And nobody else wanted to produce a show for UPN, so they had no choice.
They had to keep it going as long as they could. Well, it seemed like just as it was starting to turn the corner, the fans had already left. It was too late. The viewers were gone.
Well, yeah, exactly right. I mean, that's exactly right. It's like by the time we got to the midpoint of season 2, and that's why I make jokes about season 2 was really the season that killed us. Whether it was a particular episode, I think the one that really plummeted the ratings most was the one with Padma Lakshmi, and she was a lovely woman. She was very sweet. That was not our finest hour.
What was that one?
That was the episode where she's like an alien princess and she's stuck up and snooty and, you know.
Oh God, yes, yep.
So it was just, you know, it's like we've been there before. And, you know, Trip is like the country boy who, you know, like, well, what the hell's wrong with you, lady? And dude, yeah, who are you Rufus McDougal? Oh, heavens.
It's very much like the original series episode Alana Troyes, where Troyes comes aboard and just is like, I'm snooty. And Kirk is like, well, not on my ship.
Yeah.
Well, even with the 3 main characters, they tried to clone TOS. So you've got Captain Archer, it's like your brash knuckle dusting captain. You've got the cold Vulcan character to be like Spock. And then, hey, we need a guy with a Southern accent because Dr. McCoy kind of had that. So yeah. And
you know, I adore Jolene, and I think she did a lovely job in a lot of ways. But I think unfortunately what they didn't do is figure out how to push her and encourage her to bring some of the warmth that Leonard Nimoy brought to Spock. to Paul, and I don't say this in a pejorative way because I think she did a great job. It's written the way it's written.
Yes.
You as an actor, it's not your gig to kind of say, I'm going to impose values that you're not asking me to play. If you have a window to kind of push out certain things, value-wise, that you think, great, I'm going to take this opportunity, go for it. I don't think they gave Jolene a lot of opportunity to humanize to Paul. Which is why I think for a lot of fans, I think frankly, I think Connor felt this. I think the whole gag when they had a romance, I think a lot of people went like, what? Because it wasn't really justified.
It felt very pushed.
Yeah, and here's where Watney, our missing co-host, would get real into it. She hates every romance that's happened in Star Trek. She thinks they're all terrible. They're all forced. So she definitely thinks that about Paul.
And they are. And it's how the unfortunately it's how the sausage is made. I mean, it's
kielbasa.
Yeah, there's a studio and they're network guys and they're watching the ratings and they're saying we need more sex. You know what? 7 to 9. We need another hot lady in a cat suit. Come on.
Yeah.
And that's why you got your awesome decontamination chamber where everybody ran around in their underwear.
With the blue goo.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry Ryan, there were times she literally passed out on set because the suit she wore was so tight, it would cut off her carotid or whatever.
And it's not telling tales out of school that Kate, Mulgrew was pretty fucking pissed off that it's like, it felt like pandering. Jerry did a great job. I mean, I'm not a big student of Star Trek. I haven't seen a shitload of Star Trek. So I have been in the world now for 20 whatever years. So I know a lot of the stories. But the story, of course, is that she was not too happy that decision was made, and she and Jerry consequently had the problems.
Yeah, they did. Well,
not Jerry's fault, not in a weird way, not Kate's fault. I get
the producer's fault.
And since then, they've essentially bonded over it.
And it's not the producers; it's the network. It's not the producers; it's the network. Right. The network says, this is what I need, and this is when I need it by.
I think they're going for a demographic that maybe wasn't there because Voyager and that second half of Voyager.
Well, hey, go back to the original series. I mean, what were all the girls running around in skirts?
Yep, right? Mini skirts. Yeah.
Can I say pussies? I can say pussies.
Well, we've gone this far. I mean, that's tame now.
I know, but that word sort of like edges over into the form of misogyny. It's like I was doing so well. It was just purely lefty without moving into political incorrectness, and then I used the word pussy.
Our last listener is now gone.
Yeah. No. We've got an Irish listener. We haven't said.
Oh yeah, he's back.
Oh
right. Yeah.
Let's not do that one.
Go there. No,
we are not in the correct country for that one.
I know. And that word, having been in London for years, they use that word like
everything.
It's a compliment.
Yeah, it's how we use fuck.
Yeah.
And hence Dominic Keating still tops me as being the most profane.
Wow.
We need to get him on the show then.
Yeah, we need to get Dominic.
Well, that's his, if you get him liquored up, that's his word.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Prerequisite. I have a question that starts at Enterprise but can go into a more general place. Watney says that you once said that Dr. Phlox and yourself had similar buoyant attitudes about life. How has that buoyancy served you elsewhere in your career?
Well, I think for one thing, there's no way that you can be an actor without having a lot of bounce back ability. It's just rejection. I mean, you audition a bazillion times to get a single job. So whether it's buoyancy or resiliency, I think some of what you have to have temperamentally as an actor is the ability to take a punch. I guess if there's something else for me that buoyancy means, it's that, you just can't lose your sense of humor. You just can't. I mean, there's so much that's painful in this world. There's so much that's painful in a human life, so much loss and so much suffering that if you let yourself, sink into a slough of despond, I think and I never wanted to be that. So for me, buoyancy is it's a choice. I'm an existentialist. I believe that, to the extent that you have choices in your life, the biggest choice you have to make, which is what Sartre used to talk about, is your attitude. No, you're in prison. You don't get a choice. You're in prison, motherfucker. You're in prison. Now choose how you want to be in prison. And if anybody's ever read Orange is the New Black,
yeah,
the book,
I watched it. Oh,
the book is better. The book is way better.
Oh, I didn't know.
The book and the series are very different.
Yeah.
To me, what was interesting about the book is that she was basically told early on, before she went into prison, don't make friends. And instead, what she did was she went into prison. She said, I'm making friends.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that book, it was such a beautiful illustration of what the existentialist choice is.
It was, yeah, great show. I mean, I love that show.
But I she's not the greatest writer in the world, but in terms of the message, I just thought that that book delivers so beautifully what to me is sort of like the life message is like, you know what? You're here. There's going to be fucking pain. There's going to be heartache.
Mm-hmm.
Get kicked in the teeth. Choose how you want to deal with it. Choose.
Yeah.
I do have another question for you, but I definitely want to take turns, not occupy the whole thing. So don't forget about me coming back around to me when Renzo, Dag.
I did mine.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So my question for you is this. There's been a lot of hubbub, I'll say, about Star Trek having been too woke in recent times, right? It's having gone too left and too progressive, trying to bring in trans characters, trying to bring in bi characters, lesbians, gays, etc. Trying to just bring that into this franchise, right? And we see that Discovery's done it. You're even seeing it in Picard, which is a bit unexpected too, right? So what are some thoughts of yours towards the whole, like, is Star Trek getting too woke? I don't think you're going to think so, but I wanted to hear what you'd say on such a subject.
Yeah, I can't, to be honest with you, although I've watched a few episodes of Discovery, I'm not up to date, and I've not watched any of Picard, and I've not watched any Below Decks, and I've watched a few of the Orville's. So I would not speak from a source of knowledge in terms of what you're saying is right, is true or not. But in theory, the idea that a show that exists to push the boundaries in terms of what is acceptable and what it should be like just part of our human condition, which is, everybody on the fucking ship, as long as you're nice. To me, it's like you can't be too woke.
Right.
Perfect.
What I will say is that I think where Star Trek sometimes gets cloying is when they start kind of like going,
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if that's happening now, but I will say when you go back and you watch the original series and you watch certain Star Trek episodes, that to me has always been Star Trek's downfall. It's a thin line between being woke and being smug.
Yes. Yeah. We're a perfect society. We're post-scarcity. We're all this and that. You're right. Yeah.
And that's the thing is, I think one of the reasons that we're in a pickle, politically, is because, like it or not, and I'm one of the big offenders because I've got a big yap, but nobody wants to feel like, and I think there are people who feel like they are judged and belittled. There are people who, probably right. They probably are being judged and belittled, and whether or not they should be judged and belittled is in a way neither here nor there. Nobody wants to be judged and belittled, and they're going to get snarky with you if they feel like you're copping a tune towards them.
Right. Yeah, those are fighting words there.
It's a hard fucking thing because it's like, how do you say, you're kind of a sexist, or you're kind of a racist, or you're kind of like, an intentional dumbass. Get your head out of your ass and pay attention to the world. How do you say that without making people say, fuck you, Charlie?
Right. I don't know how to do that. I don't
know any of us know. I don't know how to do it either. I don't know,
You'll learn how to take a punch.
Don't go into politics.
Yep, number one.
Jay, did you have?
Yes. So this was what I was curious about. So just with acting in general, and this is not so much Enterprise, probably more Enterprise than anything else because it was a 4-year-long series that you did. But memorizing the lines, you were talking about memorizing the lines, walking, and I've always been fascinated with So you're filming these episodes, and at times I've read that if there's a scene that takes place in this spot and is in 2 episodes, say for example in the sick bay, we'll go ahead, we'll film each part of each episode right here while we're there. Now I don't know that happened on Enterprise. I read that there was a case a couple times on TNG. I know that happened, but so you're filming out of sequence. You're doing how many you're filming for 1 or 2 episodes per week. How do you even memorize your lines when this is not a stage play? I mean, I've been in plays. You're going linearly from beginning to end with your lines. You're not asked to start, okay, we're doing scene 5 today.
You rehearse on your own so that you know where each scene is starting from in terms of an emotional place. I mean, so that if you're shooting it out of sequence, if I'm shooting the last scene first, I have rehearsed the whole thing. So even though I'm shooting the last scene first, I know where I'm supposed to be by this scene.
Okay.
I mean, you obviously, things will surprise you along the way. It's been likened, and I think this is fair, that working on a part is a little bit like you're trying to figure out within the banks of a waterway, how fast the water goes and how turgid the water can be, and whether it's wavy or whether it's placid, but you're always contained within the boundaries.
Right.
And in that sense, as long as you do your work on the script, even though from scene to scene, when you actually get it up on its feet, you may surprise yourself, and you should surprise yourself with certain choices, you'll stay within the parameters. You'll stay within the boundaries. And so you can shoot it in any fucking order as long as you've rehearsed it.
Right. And now, do you have any prompts there on stage or on the set? It's like, okay, well, wait a minute, what do I start
with this Enterprise,
scene?
they were unusual. This happens every now and again. They didn't want you carrying, you know what sides are?
Yes.
Yeah, sides, they shrink down the scenes that they're shooting for the day and they make them small enough to stick in your pocket. Most shows have sides for the actors. Right. And a lot of actors, they're constantly, they got their sides on them the whole time. They're working off their sides all day, particularly if you're number 1 or 2 on the call sheet and you've got a lot of words. Yeah. Enterprise didn't make sides, and they didn't allow scripts on stage.
Oh.
They really wanted you to be perfect. So, and they were persnickety about it. Famously, they are one of the most famous in television history for being piss-ante about you draw West Wing. You mentioned Aaron Sorkin's another one. Yeah. It's he wants it delivered as written.
Right. Don't change any words. Don't do this.
And on Star Trek, they would also have a pronunciation guide. So it's not just as written, but it's as the pronunciation guide dictates these alien words are pronounced.
Nobulin, denobulin.
Yeah. Or if it's just gibberish, if it's just Flegindar, if you said Flegindar, they would say, no, it's Flegindar.
Are we sure we're not falling into Harry Potter here?
Was that a spell you just cast on us?
I felt really bad for Linda, who was the linguist who had to spout all that.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And I don't know how she fucking memorized that, because that was, I think notoriously on Star Trek, the engineers who've got to talk about
technobabble.
Yeah, the technobabble. And Linda is a linguist. I got off relatively light. For the most part, I had some medical terminology, but it usually was the endocrine system is I can grapple with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's rooted in real Latin, so you can pretty much steal that.
Yeah. That shit can be hard. The worst thing is when they rewrite on a dime. I mean, Deadwood, notoriously. David Milch was notorious for just scrapping a scene on the day, giving it to his actors as if it's why Jimmy Smits quit NYPD Blue. It's as if he expected his actors to be able to look at a scene and memorize it and just do it. On Deadwood, he famously wrote a very long speech for the gentleman who played the mayor, whose name is escaping me. Wonderful guy. You'll know he's been around he was on the Newhart show. Anyway, older guy, writes this long speech. This guy stays up all night long, learning this like impossible monologue. You get older, it's harder and harder to learn this shit. Shows up that day, first scene up, Milt shows up. It's like, and like that. Here, hands him fucking brand new material.
Oh, that's pretty hateful.
And it's a weird. I mean, there's like a mental block that some writers have. They don't understand what it is you have to do as an actor to get behind those words.
Especially when they're not your own words.
James
Memorizing
Woods.
your own words is so much easier.
Yeah, James Woods, notoriously, dick that he is. Did I say child rapist? Anyway, he Amber Tamblyn, I'm for you. He supposedly is like, boom, just picks it right off the page.
Wow.
And for people who have that gift, it's like, you fuckers.
That eidetic memory for scripts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wish I had that.
Not me. Not fucking me.
All right, John. So I've got one last question for you, and then I think I've exhausted myself.
Are you doing Star Trek?
I guess it's drifting out, right?
Oh, okay.
It's drifting out into that other category we talked about.
Do the thing.
You sure?
I have one more Star Trek question.
No, then you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. John, some of my favorite moments are the candid moments with the Star Trek cast. Every once in a while, somebody posts a picture that's just taken where they're all at Patrick's house and Scott's
I've never been
cooking.
invited to Patrick's house.
Well, the Rocky Horror Show picture from New York cast was pretty amazing.
Oh, you should.
That was really awesome.
I bet you haven't seen the picture when I won first prize in the costume contest, have you?
You should send it to us.
You should show.
But my question is, in those
Phlox
candid
in
moments, I can't wait for this.
I won first prize.
That's awesome.
The focus puller pulled him a leash. Let me tell you that.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
I'm dead.
He's dead.
How often do you get to hang out casually with your former Star Trek castmates?
Well, these days, of course,
Yeah.
Right.
Notwithstanding.
Yeah, I love conventions. My wife and I both. My wife, I'll segue. My wife, when she went to her first convention with me, she was on Chuck. I don't know if you ever watched Chuck. She played the general on Chuck, Bonnie Friederici. So she a little bit known herself in the genre world, and she was like, "Oh, conventions, really? I don't know." So I got her to go to one. One of the first ones we did, and she's at the very back row. And I was telling this long story about how Jolene and Connor shared a car, and Jolene gassed up the car, and Connor was like, "Oh my God, let me out!" And my wife from the very back row was like, "Pot calling the kettle black," insinuating that I've been known to pass gas on occasion. And from that moment on, she became my heckler in chief, and eventually became the person who shared the stage with me. And we grew to develop this wonderful low vaudeville act that I kind of adore, where we run around and we have squirt guns and we shampoo people's hair and we just generally like fuck around.
Yeah.
And so I loved that shit, and I would love going to conventions, and that's where I got to hang out with the other actors. And I'm always happy to hang out with the people in our own cast and any of the people who will tolerate me from any of the other casts. Jonathan Frakes will pinch my ass whenever he sees me, which I always look forward to.
I think I would too.
There was a rather hilarious set you did with Gates not too many years ago that I'm still working my way through. It's a good 45-minute set. It's nice.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Gates was a sport. I every now and again, somebody throw me up on stage with somebody who doesn't know me, and it's like I'm not very guarded. So and of course, every now and again, it'll be like one of those things where you're on stage and there's like a questioner or an interlocutor, and that person was like, "I've prepared some questions that I want to run by you about." It's like, yeah, you go ahead. You just ask me one question, then shut up, and I'll just take it. So I love all these guys. I get along fabulously with all the people from Star Trek. They're all dolls and dear hearts, and I don't see them enough. But such is the world.
Yeah.
Is it like a instant brotherhood you're in? Once you're in a Star Trek show, everyone, all the actors, actresses, and all the other shows, like everybody's just kind of this
Welcome aboard.
big club, right?
The conventions, obviously are the difference maker. I mean, they throw us together.
Yeah.
And if you choose not to go to them, then I suspect, Jolene has 3 kids, and I think she as a very, very attractive woman had an experience at one of the conventions early on that kind of put her off going.
Oh,
Certainly doesn't need the dough. So
Right.
for various reasons she's not in the universe, and there are, I'm sure, other actors that I don't know about from various incarnations of Star Trek that aren't on that circuit. If you're at all on that circuit, yeah, you bump in and you chin wag with people.
mm-hmm.
Even that said, even within the circuit, there are people who kind of keep to themselves more, and then there are carousers. And I don't need to tell you who the carousers are. I bet you know.
We've heard about it a bit.
That wraps me up for Star Trek.
Yeah.
So my last question,
Yes, sir.
it's in our other outside stuff category. You've got a library of 20,000 books behind you. You showed it off to us in the pre-show. What is your favorite sci-fi book, if you can think of just one, or what is one you want to specifically mention for me?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I have a favorite sci-fi book because, books are funny. It's like human beings, the memory of the person you had lunch with yesterday is going to be a hell of a lot stronger than the person you had lunch with 20 years ago. So
then something recent that you really like.
Yeah. I loved the Annihilation trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. And I also am really partial to the writer N.K. Jemisin. The Annihilation trilogy was particularly beautiful, I thought, because it takes a very interesting approach towards what I would call ecological sci-fi. The nature of how systems morph and change. I really don't want to say anything about it. It's Lovecraftian. It's
Okay.
They made it into a movie recently.
No, yeah, the movie's good.
No. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. But they only made the first one.
Yeah.
And it's a trilogy. And the thing takes on a very deep, interesting. If you can, the first one's great. But the 3 of them, I think, are haunting. That to me is probably the most haunting sci-fi I've read in the last couple of years. I read across all sorts of different genres, I suppose, for lack of a better word. I read a lot of fiction. I usually read history fiction, and within fiction, I just try and make sure that I'm reading books that are recognized as being good books. I don't tend to read stuff that's like meh.
Gonna make it worth your time.
That's awesome.
For sure.
Exactly. Life is short, and there are too many fucking books.
I've got a policy of I read a fiction and then a nonfiction, and a fiction and a nonfiction, but these will be my next 3 fiction books then.
Yeah, I really, 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 really.
I just threw them in my cart on my online shopping.
Yeah,
I think the last time I.
No accounting for taste.
I'm sorry.
They're darkly lyrical, and so there are times when you get a little finger drummy in terms of like get on with it. But I reread them, and they're just beautiful in what they're after, what they're wanting to get at about embracing change.
Yeah,
even
That's
beautiful.
This is kind of embarrassing, but I think the last time I read a book was maybe 18 years ago. So,
you're never too young.
That's
What kind of stuff do you like?
so I obviously naturally read Star Trek books, and the reason I liked reading Star Trek books, and I got into more. There was a period of time that I was a substitute teacher, and basically you're a babysitter. You're babysitting the kids. You're just making sure they're following the lesson plan and that the nuts don't take over the nut house. So there's a lot of reading that can be done. And the reason I really liked reading the Star Trek books is because I knew the characters. I could visualize it. I could visualize scenes. So what I was doing was reading the book and playing it in my head at the same time as if it were an episode of that show or if it was a movie. So for me, it was very, very visual, kind of visual storytelling. So that was how I enjoyed doing it. Was this is in my head while I'm reading it, because I can see the characters, I can hear their voices, et cetera, et cetera. A lot more engaging that way. But once I stopped doing that job, I kind of lost the time to put into readings. Like if that was the only thing to do, great. But there's always something else that I've got going on to do.
For me, it's just something that I grew up loving, and I the people who climb mountains love to climb mountains, and more power to them. Books are my, they're my passion, and doubtless have ruined my life in many respects. But I beat the drum on it to this extent. I do think that we live in a world in which kids should read more.
Yeah. They should. Well, they're on their phones and they're doing their Nintendo 3DSs.
This is an interesting thing that studies have discovered. When you read text on a screen, you absorb about 70% of the content because you skim. Because you're taught to read on a screen by skimming. Mm-hmm. When you read a book, you absorb much more of the context. And consequently, I think this is one of the reasons why we kind of are dumbass, because when we read shit on a screen all day long, we aren't really picking up all the material. Yeah. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We get used to skimming everything. Yeah. We prefer memes to articles.
Yeah.
You know, and it becomes, we just dumb ourselves down slowly. I do think there's something, I have the same problem with audiobooks. I appreciate a good audiobook, but it's different than having to read a book slowly. It engages your brain in a very specific way that I think is critical to an informed population, to a engaged, sharp population.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of skimming. Hell, I did that today. Skim something, got all it was for a game. There was this for Star Trek Online. They've been having a lot of problems with this bug where you have to keep retraining your skills and your captain. And as a sort of apology, here we're going to give you this thing and that thing as a thanks for bearing with us. And so I go into the game and I go looking for this thing and it's not there. So I'm kind of ticked, and I go back and I read the thing, and it said this will be available starting Friday. So, okay, yeah. So if I would have read, then I would have seen that. But I skimmed, was misinformed, and got myself all, got my knockers twisted on it. And
snap reading comprehension is a part of my job, right? Like I fix servers, so I get messages sent from customers and I have to just read through it, pick out important details, call them, and let's talk about what the problem actually is. So snap reading assessment, I am so guilty of missing things as a result of it. So and so much of what the reading we do is we're reading for, like reading a newspaper. I mean, you're not reading for style, you're reading for quick content. Reading on a screen, you're reading even faster. Reading a piece of literature, it's not just about content, it's about how the author achieves an effect. So you're reading as much for mood and style and tone and voice, and that should slow you down. I read a lot of books twice, and I'm a slow reader by choice, because I kind of think our job as readers is to say, hey, it's like a guy I just met. I want to give that guy every opportunity to introduce me to his soul. And I'm not going to fucking cursorily breeze through him while I'm watching the ball game on TV. I want to give that guy my undivided attention. And I kind of feel like books offer you an opportunity in this world to do that in a world in which we don't do that very well. Well, I've got a book recommendation for you. It's possible you've already read it, but I'll give it a shot anyways. Yes. Infomocracy by Malka Older. It's a near speculative fiction, so like say 15, 20 years from now, where elections have become so data analyzed that every 100,000 people have a representative, and its national elections are handled completely differently. It's a manipulation at a level that the Republicans couldn't even dream of. You pick your own constituents kind of thing.
Who's the writer?
Malka Older.
Okay.
It's a pretty fun read, pretty quick. All right. Has a lot of feels of Man in the High Castle to me.
Let's hope it doesn't turn into another handbook for totalitarianism.
Handmaid's Tale and such,
Yeah, pretty fucking amazing, isn't it? I mean, just like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When Putin acknowledges the president-elect before the fucking
President does.
McConnell, it's just like,
Yeah. Hey, John, we're going to go into a closeout after this, but I have one last question.
yes.
Do you have any favorites?
Don't give James Woods my address but also I'm trying to think of all the people I've alienated tonight. He's probably number one, but you can probably cut that part because he's a violent man from what
He was the first person I thought of when that topic aired its head a while ago.
Oh my.
But let's ask a personal question, John.
Right,
do you have any favorite Sazerac recipes?
Sazerac?
That's the word.
I think that the trap of a Sazerac is you can overdo it on the Pernod or the Anisette. It wants to have a little bit of the flavor of licorice without being too licoricey. So that's all I will say. Some Sazeracs use brandy, which I think is not really supposed to be Sazerac, but I've had good ones. Where did you come up with? How do you know I like a Sazerac?
That's on your Twitter.
All right.
Are you running your Twitter or is that someone else?
I did enough
fuck
homework.
one sheep, as the old joke.
I did enough homework to know that you liked it, but not enough to find a pronunciation guide for it.
Well, it's a famous New Orleans drink, and that's where my wife and I went on our honeymoon, and where I lived for a little bit when I was a kid. And it's one of the great cities in the world, particularly if you're a boozer, which unfortunately I am. So.
I think a good marriage for a closing line here is don't make fun of people who mispronounce words in speaking because they learned them by reading.
That is very true.
That's beautiful.
True. That's very true. That's very true.
So we're just going to go into closers now. Hey, listeners and viewers, if you want to keep up with all of John's magnanimous efforts, head over to Twitter and give Hollywood Food Co. a follow. While you're there, give John a follow at John Billingsley 60, and do us the awesome favor of following Beyond Trek Pod. If you like us and want more, head over to Patreon and subscribe. 100% of your proceeds go to production expenses. We're doing the rest of this because we love it. If you're just listening, subscribe to us on YouTube at Beyond Trek Productions, where we will say the exact same things, but this time you can watch our reactions and shenanigans.
Anything offensive that I said tonight, I was paid to say by these gentlemen, and that's not how I really am.
It was a bribe.
There's a premium to get.
They paid me to call Marina Sirtis a has-been. They paid me.
I had to write a check for that.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.